I recently did a video attempting to analyze staking periods in HEX and comparing those with what is currently working in the traditional banking system and using that comparison in order to try and find a good sweet spot for HEX stakes that would be reasonable in the context of, well, human lifespan. There were some really good comments to that video, and I now believe that that video was probably an apples to oranges comparison, and I'll explain why. And it should be obvious why, really. It will make a lot of sense to you. So I was only looking from one perspective, and that was the perspective of ease and comfort for the person without taking earnings into consideration. The biggest difference is traditionally CDs are fixed interest rate. Now there are CDs that are variable interest rate, but the variation is not very big, and the variation does not exist in order to enrich the buyer of the CD. The variation in interest rates that can be possible with a traditional CD only exists really to match with what is currently the market standard. So right now, we're currently in an extremely low interest rate environment, and CD interest rates are extremely low. They're about 1.5%. So it might be advantageous to take out a variable interest rate CD just in case interest rates rise. You won't be locked in to this low 1.5% interest CD. Now, alternatively, if interest rates drop, the interest rate on the CD is going to drop too. It's not guaranteed to go up. That is completely antithetical to what we see with HEX. In HEX, interest rates are virtually guaranteed to rise over time. That's not the case with traditional CDs. Most traditional CDs are going to be fixed interest rate anyway, so for the purposes of this video, let's assume that they're fixed. But if they're not fixed, they're going to be either slightly increasing or even dropping over time. So with a traditional CD, the longer you buy a CD for, the longer your term is, you're not getting any benefit from a staking perspective. So with a traditional CD, and this is what we saw in our examples, let's assume that a 2-year CD pays 1.5%, and a 5-year CD pays 1.5%. So in that situation, there would be no advantage to buying a 5-year CD aside from maybe purchasing fees or something. Maybe if there's a small purchasing fee when buying a CD, you would do better by going 5-year, but it's probably not going to be that much. So a person in that situation would be better off buying a 2-year CD, and then when it was over, buying another 2-year CD and just rolling all of the interest into a new CD and just doing that. They would be better doing that than locking in a long term, because they're not getting any advantage from a long term. This is not the case with HEX. With HEX, if you lock in 5 years, on year 5, in year 5, or within year 4, you're going to experience a higher real interest rate than you did in year 1. With HEX, if you have let's just go all the way, if you have a 15-year or a 5.5 day stake, on day 5554, you're going to have a radically, not a little bit, a radically higher interest rate than you did on day 100. That's just how it works. No such mechanism exists in the traditional CD market. If the increasing interest rate mechanism that is present in HEX did exist in the traditional CD market, it seems extremely likely that the 5-year standard that we see today would not exist. When you really think about it, in such a case, those CDs would probably go out as long as feasibly possible, and then they would probably end up trading on some type of open market. Like there would probably be CD securities that traded on a market similar to what happens with bonds today. There wouldn't be a lot of 5-year CDs because it wouldn't make sense, because the gains would be so massive that they would outstrip any downturn or any downside from the time that had gone by. Hex sees what I'm going to describe as an exponential increase in interest rates over time. CDs do not experience an exponential increase in interest rates. So comparing the two and comparing time periods between the two does not make any sense. So thank you to the comments below that video. It spurred a lot of thought and was really the inspiration for making this video.